kind of start off with questions to ask an agency. You definitely want to meet with agencies, talk to them, get a feel for their staff that they have, their program, their timelines. It's really important to kind of dig into that, make sure it's the right fit for you. Are you looking for more of a hands-off agency, maybe a larger agency that's just that just kind of gives you some tips, or do you want more of that closer support? Do you want to build a relationship with your agency and have them, available for emergencies? It really just depends on what you're looking for. Some of the questions I would ask an agency if I was an intended parent or a surrogate would be, how long has the agency been operating? How have you done in the last year? How many, journeys do you support and guide? How big is your staff? What does your support system look like? Do you have availability? What's your availability? If there was an emergency, is there an emergency line? I would also kind of ask questions like, do you currently have surrogates available, or do you have intended parents available? I'm looking for the right match. Is there someone that you might have in mind for me if I go through the clearance process as a surrogate? You also want to ask too, is there any lawsuits pending? Have you had any lawsuits? Kind of those kind of questions are really important to understand and know. We also want to make sure that, what is the typical caseload for your coordinators? And that's important, while some agencies or some coordinators might be able to handle, a few, a dozen, 2 dozen. It's really important to look at that and then ask about that. How often is there normal communication? Communication is going to be so important during this journey. So it's really important that you are able to find out that information and make sure it's to the standard you want. What type of communication do you guys usually have? Or sharing the type of communication? Is phone calls better for you? Is texting, calling, emails, what works best for you? And then how does the agency normally communicate? You also will probably want to know too is, are there counseling services provided to the surrogates or their families? Is that something that we can, get for our surrogate? Or also what type of clearances is happening? And for the surrogates, it's important for you to understand too, the clearance process. What does that look like? What are the timelines like? Asking these questions are going to help you to understand more of the agency, but also understand the process more and find an agency that you'd like to work with. As a surrogate, I would never recommend an agency that is going to quickly get you through clearance in a week. You want to make sure that your records are being, that they're being reviewed, that they're being gathered. Those typical things will take, 4 to 6 weeks to gather records, background checks, drug panels, psych evaluations, those kind of items. And so it's important, while you're excited to be a surrogate, it's important to make sure that they're looking out for your best health too. You are usually, as a surrogate, we are mothers first. And so we never want to put a woman in danger or cause harm. While a lot of surrogates, our hearts are really great, we have to look at those medical records and make sure it would be a safe journey for you. We would never want something to happen to you or a higher chance of complications due to previous pregnancies. I would also ask, does the agency, work with normal clinics? Do you have normal clinics? Where are your clinics located? Here at SurrogateFirst, there's a few, clinics that we work with on a regular basis, but we also work across the United States with clinics. So asking them where their local clinics are that they usually work with or have intended parents through, what does that process look like? You also will want to ask things like, can you pick your own OB? How does insurance work? Postpartum support. Is there pregnancy support? Is there postpartum support? Do you have a Facebook group with your surrogates to connect with? What types of items do you have available to your surrogates to support them during that process? And if they wanted extra help or they wanted to build a community of other surrogates. You also want to check too to see, how does reimbursement work? Understanding, if an agency holds escrow themselves. We never recommend an agency holding escrow or having their own attorneys in-house, but there are agencies like that. At Surrogate First, we will recommend attorneys, but you are more than welcome to work with any attorney in your state that is Quad A certified, that's familiar with the surrogacy process. And the escrow companies are chosen by the intended parents. We always recommend an escrow company that is not the same as the attorneys who drafted the contracts, it being a third party that has, it's unbiased. And so that's definitely what you would like to ask is, what escrow companies do you normally work with? Is it direct deposit or is it a printed check? How long does it take to get reimbursed? That's definitely some questions, to ask your agency and see how their process is. Also important, what are their qualifications? When you're going through the websites, you can definitely check that out. And so I can show you some of those kind of things. And then I always think it's important to find out from agencies, why did you start? Who are your founders? What was the reason behind creating your agency? Get to know the heart of the agency, what they're, what's important to them. What are they trying to, accomplish in the surrogacy field? I would also ask about the experience of the staff. Are people intended parents? Are they surrogates? Have they been in the industry? Have they worked with IVF? Are they familiar with the process? Those are really important questions, whether you're an intended parent or a surrogate. So that's kind of, that's the whole, that's the questions I would look for. You want to make sure that they are a solid agency. I definitely would ask too about last year. How did last year go with your cases? During this, pandemic, a lot of agencies, unfortunately, were laying off or were having troubles, and some even sadly closed. The pandemic was incredibly hard for a lot of agencies. So asking them, hey, how did it go last year? Did you see a drop in your cases? Have you been able to retain your staff? And just kind of understanding that. Also turnover. I think it's important to find out how often do you have coordinators that that no longer work with you, or that you've, that have been fired or have left. And then how often are you hiring too, to understand what their flow is like, so that, am I going to have the coordinator for the entire journey? While, like any job, there may be occasions where a coordinator is, stepping out of their position, or maybe they're being, promoted to another. It's important to have that transparency and to find out from the agency if they're going through coordinators 3 or 4 times, in a journey. That could be definitely a problem, and that could be hard for you to start over with building those relationships. I would also ask them, about their growth. Have they added onto their team? Are they, what's the plan, with the agency? Ourselves at Surrogate First, we're working to be the best agency out there. Definitely not the biggest, but we want to be the best. We also want to have the feedback of our clientele. And I think that's important to ask too. If there's a problem, if I felt like I've been let down, who do I talk to about that? How can I get help with that? If there's an issue with my coordinator, who would I speak to? You should be able to have supervisors, managers, directors, even founders involved in the process that can help and answer questions, especially in emergencies or if there is an issue. All agencies are out there. I mean, for the most part, I believe we're just trying to help. We're trying to help grow families. We're trying to protect both the surrogate and the intended parents in this journey, making sure to support them, to educate them throughout this process. But it is important to ask different agencies. I'm going to share my screen a little bit and kind of go over our website so you can kind of see where you can find things. And then that way, when you're looking through and researching, it may be easier to find. Okay, so here's our website. And so you should see things normally on the agency's websites where it'll have information for surrogates. So frequently asked questions, the program itself, steps, maybe a initial application or a full application. You'll also see information on intended parents. So if you're a surrogate and you want to learn a little bit more, it's important to Our website will have things like a cost calculator. As a surrogate, my first time, I had no idea what surrogacy costed. I don't know what I was thinking, but my first time, obviously it wasn't with SurrogateFirst, but I didn't think about the entire cost of the journey. And so there's a cool cost calculator here where you can kind of get an idea of what parents are going through when they're creating their embryos, and then the process with surrogacy and health insurance and attorneys, and all of those things that come into play. We also have like an about where you can learn about team members. There's a resource center. So you might be blogs, if you're interested in learning more about the aspects of it, learning what kind of support you have, not only on the website, but also with the agency. So I would definitely, check it out. Obviously, requirements are one of the most important things. So asking your agency about those requirements is really important. Making sure you have it here. Making sure you understand their compensation. While a lot of agencies have I guess I would recommended compensation where they say, hey, these are some things that are important you may want to have. It's important to learn and understand, like, if there's things that you need changed on there, if you don't need something, but you may need another item. Learning about those kind of things and asking the agency, do you have just a straightforward compensation? Am I able to change things if I don't necessarily need some of these items, and I may need, additional help here if something was to come up? So it's important to understand all of that. I would say that that's pretty much it. It is a short meeting today. I think we've covered a lot. Make sure to find out how long the agency has been around, what their numbers look like for journeys. How many journeys are they doing? How many journeys are they doing in a year? What type of support do you have? Can you, are you able to contact anyone? Also ask them for referrals. Do you have any surrogates I can speak to? Do you have any intended parents I could speak to that have been through your process? That definitely will help you guys with the, going through the journey and getting those answers. Don't feel bad about talking to a couple agencies. What I would say though is, before you do a full application or before you start the clearance process with an agency, please make sure you're committed to that agency. Many agencies will put, there's a lot of cost into clearances. So I always recommend to surrogates, hey, talk to a couple of agencies. If you're talking to them and you're researching, that's great. Let me know, or I'll check back with you if you'd like to move forward in the process with our agency, because background checks and medical records and drug panels and nurses' reports, all of those items are expenses. And so while we want to keep the cost down for the intended parents for the journey, it's important that we watch those items. If you have any questions for us as an agency, or for me, you can always reach out to Ashley, which is ASHLEY at surrogatefirst.com. If you have general questions, you can always reach us at info, which is INFO at surrogatefirst.com. Our Facebook page, our Instagram, you can reach us those ways too with a message or a comment. We're here to educate and to help. If you're interested in looking at our handbook to see what the steps are, the process, if you'd like to just schedule a no pressure meeting where we talk about what is surrogacy, the good, bad, and the ugly, you can always do that too. We do have that available with our Calendly links. Our website has a great feature where you can actually go and click on our calendar and be able to schedule something right away. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If we have any questions, I would love to answer those. We'll go through the Facebook Lives if you're on Facebook Live, and we'll be able to, answer those questions. If you have something that's important, you'd like it answered right away, you can message us on Facebook, or you can give me a call on our phone number, which is 424-567-3703. Again, that's 424-567-3703. And I hope that we have answered your questions. I hope that you have a little bit more information and feel more comfortable about moving forward. If you'd like to call us on our toll-free number, it is 1-833-99-BLESS. That's BLESS, or 833-992-5377. Well, I thank you so much, and I hope to speak with you in the future.